Resident Evil 7 Cloud Edition for the Nintendo Switch has a big surprise. What is it, and how is the game performing? Bloodstained Ritual of the Night backers on Kickstarter are a bit upset over Curse of the Moon. What's going on with that? And is Sony working on a new PlayStation-related handheld? The answer may surprise you. All that plus my State of Decay 2 impressions, because I don't feel like doing an individual video on it, on this episode of RGT News for Friday, May 25th. Let's go!
RGT News coming at you right now. Woo! RGT 85 coming to you with the freshest video game news. Now take it away.
Resident Evil 7 Cloud Edition has hit the Nintendo Switch in Japan. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what that is, basically it is a way for Capcom to essentially rent you Resident Evil 7 via the cloud on your Nintendo Switch. You don't download the actual game, you don't own the actual game, it streams from a massive computer and it's basically based on your internet connection. You get a 15-minute free trial, or you can rent the game for 180 days for about $20. And I was very curious about this because I love Resident Evil games, and of course I love my Nintendo Switch, so I wanted to see how this game would perform. So I downloaded the demo, and unfortunately, if you live in the United States, it does not run well at all. It actually doesn't run pretty much, period. I was able to get one of the intro cutscenes sort of get going for about a minute or so, and then I would lose connection. But that's to be expected. Obviously, the servers are in Japan. This is a game for Japan only as of right now. But what's very interesting is a big surprise that was in the Resident Evil 7 Cloud Edition version for the Nintendo Switch. The game actually features all of the English voice acting and all English text that you can access via the menu. So you can play the game completely in English. Everything is in English. So then that makes me think, why is this game not out in the States as well? Maybe Capcom is doing a bit of a test in Japan with this to see how people react to it and whatnot, but I would totally rent Resident Evil 7 Cloud Edition for like $20 to play it for 6 months. Obviously, I'm going to play the game once and do all the DLC, because the game does feature all the DLC, and I might not return to it. So for like $20 to check out the game instead of buying a retail copy for like $60, I'm not totally against that, to be quite honest with you. I just wish it worked in the States. Maybe there'll be some sort of E3 announcement and Capcom will bring this cloud game to the States, because I think a lot of people would be interested in it. Now, as far as how the game actually runs, it seems like it runs pretty decent. I'm going to show a quick video from a Twitter user named @BenjiStandard who uploaded this video. He lives in Japan, and it looks pretty decent, honestly. Obviously, this video is heavily compressed as it is on Twitter, but I was pretty impressed with how decent it runs. He said the game runs really well and he's enjoying it. So definitely, Capcom, bring this stateside. I would love to check it out, and I think a lot of other Switch owners would like to as well. What do you think about Resident Evil 7 Cloud Edition? Let me know in the comments section down below. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is of course the spiritual successor to the Castlevania franchise, and recently Bloodstained Curse of the Moon was announced as the subsequent 8-bit version of the game. That was a Kickstarter reward tier, that stretch goal that Kickstarter backers hit, and the game released on May 24th. Now, I actually picked up a Japanese eShop copy on May 23rd, and I absolutely love the game. I did a full review of it. It's just an absolutely fantastic game. But as we see a lot with Kickstarter projects, there are some Kickstarter woes with this, because guess what? If you back the game, you still don't have your copy of Curse of the Moon because of some issues going on with the Kickstarter campaign. Now, they did say you could get a free Steam key for the game in the meantime while they sort out the codes and figure out how to get the codes to people, but honestly, this is such a disappointment. I couldn't imagine people spending money on something and then having to wait while you could just go into the eShop or on the PSN network and buy the actual game. I know my buddies at My Life in Gaming donated $100 to, or pledged $100 to their Kickstarter campaign, and still do not have the ability to play this Curse of the Moon unless they play it via Steam. And that's just a real big disappointment to me. But unfortunately, that is some of the issues with doing Kickstarters, honestly, and giving money to these Kickstarter campaigns that you're not sure how they're going to turn out. So I definitely understand why some people are upset. Curse of the Moon is an absolutely fantastic game. I absolutely love it to death, and it sucks that you're not able to play it, because really it is just awesome. Is Sony working on a new portable console? The answer may surprise you. Obviously, portability is a big thing nowadays with the rise of things like the iPhones and Androids and iPads, and of course the Nintendo Switch. Now, Sony has been pretty successful in the mobile market when it comes to things like the PSP and the PS Vita. Sure, it might not have done as well as the DS and the 3DS, but they still sold pretty damn well, and a lot of people seem to underplay that aspect because I don't know why. I guess when you compare it to Nintendo's numbers, it's definitely not as big, but it's still pretty impressive numbers. Well, the president of Sony Interactive, Mr. Kodera, had the following to say about a potential new PlayStation Portable. In my opinion, rather than separating portable gaming from consoles, it is necessary to continue thinking of it, portable gaming, as one method to deliver more gaming experiences and exploring what our customers want from portable. We want to think about many options. Now, that's pretty interesting because obviously I think a lot of companies are seeing what Nintendo did with the Nintendo Switch. It really sort of molded the home console and portable market into one sort of thing, and you have to take notice of that if you're a company like Sony or Microsoft. So it'll be interesting to see if Sony does come out with a successor to the PlayStation Vita. Obviously, the Vita is pretty much dead. It's, on its way out, unfortunately. They're already stopping physical media for it, so it's a shame that the Vita died the way it did. I think Sony could have definitely supported it more with some big titles for the system, but it will be interesting to see what Sony does next, if anything, in the portable market. Ubisoft is gearing up for a big E3, and recently they announced a handful of games that you'll be able to check out and play on the show floor, and games that will be involved in their presentation. The games list is as follows: The Division 2, Beyond Good and Evil 2, For Honor, Skull and Bones, Starlink, Battle for Atlas, and Transference. Now, it's interesting to see one game on that list, that being For Honor, because that game completely flopped, and I don't really know why they continue to support that game, because it just did not do well. I'll be interested to see The Division 2, and of course Beyond Good and Evil 2. I definitely think that's a really cool looking game, and that Starlink game actually sounds pretty interesting. If you remember, that was a multi-platform game that was announced, sort of a Toys to Life sort of thing, but with spaceships and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see what's going on with that game, because we haven't heard anything from it since E3 of last year. So I'm curious to see how that game is coming along. Could Overwatch be coming to the Nintendo Switch? Maybe. We've heard rumors that Overwatch could potentially come to the Nintendo Switch, but in a recent interview with Blizzard's Matthew Hawley, he had to say the following about the potential of Overwatch coming to the Nintendo Switch. I think it's one of those things we constantly evaluate, where technology is going, where the industry is going. There are challenges in running on platforms that we are not on, otherwise we would probably be on some of those platforms. We'll see where things go. Certainly there's a large number of people out there who have the Switch and mobile phones, but right now the core development team is focused on supporting the live game. So pretty much, maybe. It's one of those things where I think if they could get a competent version running in a timely manner, that they would do it, but I could definitely foresee why they're not super interested in doing it. Overwatch sold really well, it performed really well, it's one of the most popular games, so there's not a real dire need to get this game out on other platforms, but I think it would be cool for Nintendo Switch owners who like these sort of games to be able to play the game. And finally, to wrap this video up, I want to give you guys some of my brief State of Decay 2 impressions. I was going to do a full video on this game, but it's such a big game and a game that I'm just sort of playing to enjoy it, not really to review it, that I sort of just wanted to talk about it but not do a full dedicated video on it. Because a lot of people have been giving this game some pretty negative backlash, and a lot of that stems from the online portion of the game. It seems like the online portion of the game is a very broken, buggy mess with tons of glitches and just very, very poor coding when it comes to the online stuff. People are losing their characters, there's tons of huge glitches, but as far as the single player experience goes, I put about probably 6 to 7 hours into the single player experience, and I don't really hate it, honestly. It's actually pretty interesting. The whole core of the gameplay is basically you are a survivor, you're with other survivors, you try to recruit other survivors, and you basically have a home base that you're constantly having to build up. You scavenge things a lot. You go to different locations on the map and basically try to find resources, materials, food, fuel, things like that to sort of build up your base camp and so that you can survive these zombie things. It's a really interesting game, honestly. But then again, I did get it on Game Pass, so I couldn't really imagine spending the $30 to play this game, especially when there's huge online issues like that, because one of the big draws to the game is the cooperative aspect. And since there is permadeath in the game, if your character dies in someone else's game, they also die in your game. So you lose that character forever, which just seems really strange to me. because you don't want to lose your characters so easily. You're constantly leveling up and building your characters by using them. So that seems like a big oversight, and it's unfortunate that one of the key components of the game, the online co-op, is just so broken. But as a single player experience, as someone who got it on Game Pass for essentially free by, using the Game Pass service, I don't hate the game. I'm having some decent times with it. It is a bit glitchy, it is a bit buggy, but it's not a terrible game. I don't think it's one of these, worst games of all time. I think just one of the big things is the fact that after Sea of Thieves, people wanted a true AAA experience, and State of Decay 2 is not that. It definitely feels like a middleware game. So Microsoft is pretty much on two strikes this year, and with Crackdown 3 being the next game on the horizon for the system, and the supposed development issues with that game and how quiet things have been, it's a very strange year for the Xbox One. So hopefully Crackdown 3 ends up being better, but State of Decay 2, it's not a terrible game. It's definitely kind of mediocre, but I think you can have some fun with it if you like the sort of Sims style of gameplay where you're constantly healing characters and you're constantly doing things for your home base and, killing some zombies as well. Alright, and that is going to do it for the Friday, May 25th edition of RGT News. Now, I do want to let you guys know there will not be an RGT News next Wednesday, as I will be out of town. I'm heading up north for a couple days for Memorial Day, so I will not be able to do that video, unfortunately, so do not be on the lookout for that. But there will be content on the channel as well. I'm scheduling some videos. There's going to be some reviews, some unboxings, things like that. Don't worry, there's still going to be content, just not in RGT News next Wednesday, so just keep that in mind. But thank you for checking out this video. Let me know what you think about all the news in the comment section down below. If you want Overwatch on the Switch, if you want Resident Evil 7 Cloud Edition, if you want a new PlayStation Portable, and thank you for watching this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, and if you really enjoyed it, check out all the links in the description box down below. We got Patreon, t-shirts, social media, all sorts of fun ways to keep up to date with the world of RGT 85, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Later.
RGT!